Hello, my dear adventurers, it's John. Welcome back to our cozy haven, where the world's whispers turn into soft echoes and magical dreams. Tonight, we're going on a trip to the timeless lands of Middle-earth. Old trees tell stories about the past, and big rivers sing songs about legends, saying that the light from the stars shines on the routes untrodden, and the air is heavy with the smell of pine and the promise of adventure. Picture yourself sitting down on a wooden stool next to a fire in the middle of an elven glade. The flames keep you warm. You there, flickers dancing across the forest floor. Picture the walls of -2, tall and proud. They guard the old secrets in the heart of the city. So put your day's worries and thoughts to rest and enjoy your cozy nook. Now come with me as we go through the tales of Legolas, the Prince Archer, exploring the magic and wonder that surround his famous adventures. His keen eyes have seen the farthest reaches of this world, and his swift longbow has defended its deepest secrets. Let's start on a journey into the serene and magical realm of Middle-earth, away from the stress and bustle of daily life. Begin by finding a nice place to sit or lie down, wherever you can feel completely at ease. Gently close your eyes and take a slow, deep breath. In feeling the air fill your lungs, release it slowly, letting go of any stress with every breath, and feel your body rest deeply. Your shoulders, your arms, your legs, all becoming wonderfully weightless as your body settles. Picture yourself standing at the edge of Rivendell, the last homely house east of the sea. The air here is crisp, filled with the smell of blue-growing eleanor and fill flowers that sway gently in the breeze. Tall, elegant trees surround you, their leaves whispering old elvish songs that speak of wisdom and peace. The sounds of laughter and soft talks drift through the air from the secret elven halls, blending harmoniously with the babbling of nearby brooks that cascade down rocky slopes. Feel the cool, smooth stones under your feet as you walk through the lush. The grass is soft and bouncy beneath your steps. Next, find yourself standing by the shores of the mighty river. Its clear, sparkling waters mirror the deep blue of the sky, and the bright stars begin to emerge. As night falls, as you look across the water, you see the majestic peaks of the misty mountains in the distance, their snow-capped summits glowing softly under the light of the rising moon. Picture the countless secrets and the hidden tales deep within its cavernous embrace, where creatures of unknowable power dwell. With each breath, let the spirit of these places fill you with peace and wonder. Now fully submerged in this serene world, allow yourself to be pulled into the enchanting tales of Legolas, the Prince Archer of Mirkwood. The sun dipped low on the horizon, throwing long shadows over the verdant hills of Ethelon. Legolas stood at the edge of a balcony overlooking the lush expanse that he had helped to rejuvenate. His keen eyes scanned the faraway trees, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves. Despite the beauty of the scene before him, a sense of unease gnawed at his. A raven circled overhead, its dark outlines stark against the twilight sky. It ascended fast, landing gracefully on the stone railing beside him. Legolas extended his arm, allowing the bird to hop onto his wrist, connected to its leg, which was a small roll of paper. With a sigh, he unfurled the message, praising his father's seal. Immediately, Legolas, my son, dark whispers have reached my ears. From the depths of Dor, though the fortress was cleaned, a shadow stirs once more. The forest grows restless, and our scouts have beheld strange and frightening visions. We are in serious need of your aid. Thranduil, king of Mirkwood. Legolas felt a chill run down his spine. The scars of the past war were still fresh in his mind, and the thought of another threat rising was troubling. He knew his job was clear. The next morning he prepared for his journey, his heart heavy with the weight of approaching darkness. He clasped his dark green robe around his shoulders and carefully placed some Raptilmer's bread into his pack as he saddled his horse. A familiar voice broke through his thoughts. Legolas, are you going without bidding? Farewell. He turned to see Toriel, her red hair catching the morning light and her eyes filled with worry. I must return to Mirkwood, he answered, his voice steady and calm. There is trouble stirring in Dew. Guldur's Toriel's face hardened with resolve. Then I shall go with you, she said with finality. Legolas knew it was no use arguing and in truth, was glad for her company. I should have known you wouldn't let me leave alone, my friend, he said, a small smile gracing his lips and a sense of purpose settling over. Let us make haste. Mirkwood needs us. Their journey was arduous. The way to Mirkwood through the terrain was rough and steep. They climbed over jagged rocks and navigated tight ledges, the wind howling through the old trees as they traveled. Their banter lightened the burden of the trip. That the many nights and years they had shared were a testament to their strong friendship. Toriel glanced down at Legolas from the cliff, a playful smile on her lips. Come now. Legolas tries to keep up. I would hate to have to tell your father that I had to leave you behind. Legolas laughed, his breath steady despite the climb. Fear not, Toriel. I shall do my best to stay by your side. Good, she answered, amusement in her voice. I would not want to carry the guilt of beating the Prince of Mirkwood. The air grew colder as they neared the borders of Mirkwood, the trees higher and darker, their branches twisted like skeletal fingers. The familiar smell of pine mixed with an underlying sense of one evening. As they camped beneath the stars, Toriel spoke softly, her voice a mere whisper against the roaring fire. Do you think this evil is akin to that of old? Legolas stared into the flames, his mind drifting back to the followers of Morgoth and Sauron. I cannot say it is of something evil that we know. The realm carries a shadow of darkness to it. Toriel nodded, her eyes reflecting the dancing firelight. But we shall face it together. Come what may. Legolas felt a surge of thanks and respect for his companion. Your faith is a beacon, my dear friend. It guides us even in the darkest of times. His eyes began to twinkle with mischief and truth. I almost feel sorry for our enemies having to face both of us in war. It must be a daunting fate. The silence that followed was soothing, a shared understanding that needed no words. They were bound by their past and their promise to protect their home. They knew that whatever awaited them in the depths of Dhu Gulur, they would face it side by side, their hearts and arrows united against the encroaching darkness. As they drew closer to the heart of the forest, signs of the approaching evil became more apparent. Webs hung thick from the trees, glistening with dew in the pale light. The once lively undergrowth was now choked with twisted vines and ghostly forms that skittered away just out of sight. Upon reaching Thul's halls, they were met with a mix of relief and apprehension. Thrall embraced his son, his eyes betraying the fear that his regal behavior could not mask. Legolas, your swift appearance is most welcome. The forest is changing. We must find the cause of this new evil. Legolas nodded, his gaze steely with determination. We will find it, father, and we will end. That night they enjoyed the kindness of the woodland elves. Despite the dark times, King Thranduil spared no expense for his son Legolas, and Toriel feasted on the best game and the sweetest foods before having a well-earned rest. But soon dawn came, and with it the load of duty. They ventured deeper into the darkening forest, the shadows getting thicker with each step. The once known paths were now twisted and dangerous, the air heavy with evil. As they approached Dol Guldur, the sense of forbidding intensified. Legolas and Toriel moved with silence grace, their elven senses attuned to every sound and movement. The further they went, the more the forest seemed to close in around them, and sunshine rarely touched the forest floor. Legolas halted suddenly, his keen eyes spotting a disturbance in the bushes. Do you see it? He whispered, pointing to a set of deep clawed tracks that marred the forest floor. Toriel knelt beside the tracks, her brow furrowing. "These are fresh." The thing that made them close as a stirring sound to their left drew their attention. Both elves knocked shots with their bows ready. From the shadows emerged a group of thrown scouts, their faces drawn with tiredness and fear. "The spiders are everywhere," one of the scouts reported. "Ed, their queen, has taken refuge in the ruins of Dol Guda. We cannot move through the forest without encountering their." Legolas and Toriel followed the scouts back to Thoral's camp, where the elven king was already marshaling his warriors. The mood was tense. Every elf was aware of the seriousness of the situation. Thran's voice rang out clearly. "And leading today we fight for Mirkwood. The Spider Queen and her brood must be driven from our lands. We will recover our home." The elves moved swiftly, their moves a well-practiced dance of precision and grace. As they approached the ruins of Dol Guldur, the sight that met them was harrowing. The once mighty fortress was enshrouded in thick, glistening webs, throwing an eerie pallid sheen over the ancient stone. The air was alive with the chittering of countless spiders, their eyes gleaming like sinister stars in the gloom. The fight began with a hail of arrows, the elves' expert marksmanship thinning the ranks of the spiders. But the real task lay ahead within the dark halls of Dol Guldur itself. Legolas and Toriel led the charge, their blades flashing as they cut through the webs and the monstrous spiders that emerged to defend their queen. The air was thick with the unpleasant smell of venom and decay, the sounds of battle echoing through the twisted passageways. As they went deeper into the fortress, an unsettling silence fell upon them. The passageways grew narrower, the walls slick with moisture, and covered in a sickly bioluminescent fungus. Their footsteps echoed softly, each one a memory of the countless souls that had been lost in this accidental place. They made their way to the heart of the fortress, where the Spider Queen awaited them. She was a hideous being, her body a grotesque amalgamation of dark kitten and glistening webs. Her many eyes mirrored the torchlight with a malicious gleam. Legolas and Toriel moved as one, a seamless mix of archery and swordsmanship. Legolas's arrows struck with pinpoint accuracy, distracting the beast and driving her back, while Toriel darted in and out her blades, finding the Spider Queen's weak spots. The queen's screw reached in fury, her huge legs thrashing and webs shooting out in desperate efforts to ensnare her attackers. Legolas to the left, Toriel shouted as she barely avoided a spray of venom. Legolas leapt to the side, loosing arrows that lodged themselves in the queen's chitis hide. Each hit seemed to weaken her, but she fought back with relentless fury. Toriel moved with the quickness of a dancer, her twin blades cutting through the webs and hacking at the queen's legs. The Spider Queen reared back, her eyes locking on Lesson with murderous aim. With a swift motion, she lunged at the elf, her huge jaws snapping. Legolas, seeing Toriel in danger, drew his bowstring back to its limit, and now he yelled, "Toriel, dove to the side!" Just as Legolas fired his arrow, the projectile flew straight and true, hitting the Spider Queen in one of her many eyes. She let out a thunderous scream, rearing back in painstakingly. The opportunity arose, and Toriel rolled to her feet and lunged forward with a fierce cry. She drove both her blades deep into the queen's underbelly, wrenching them with all her strength. The Spider Queen Sinvi yelled, her legs kicking wildly as she screeched her death throes. The fight seemed to pause as the massive creature felt her body moving before finally lying still. Silence fell over the dark halls of Dol Guldur, broken only by the labored breaths of the elven warriors. Legolas and Toriel stood over the fallen queen, their faces echoing the fatigue and relief of victory. "It is done," Legolas said, his voice heavy with the weight of their fight. Toriel nodded, wiping the sweat from her brow, "But the forest is still infested. We must drive out the rest of these creatures and clear Mirkwood of their taint. The elves rallied their spirits. Boosted by the death of the Spider Queen, they moved carefully through the fortress and the surrounding forest, rooting out the leftover spiders and destroying their webs. The fight was fierce, but the elves fought with renewed determination. By the time the sun began to set, the last of the spiders had been driven out or killed. The forest, though still scarred, began to feel lighter. The heavy weight of the darkness lifting his head, Thranduil approached his son and Toriel, his eyes filled with pride and gratitude. You have done a great job for our people and for all of Middle-earth. Mirkwood owes you a debt that can never be. Rabbi Legolas shook his head. We fight for our home, father. That is all the reward we need. Toriel to put a hand on Legolas's shoulder, and now we must begin the healing. The forest needs us more than ever together. And the elves set about the arduous job of restoring Mirkwood. They cleared away the webs and debris and tended to the hurt trees. And planted new life where darkness had taken root. It was a work of love and dedication, every elf adding to the renewal of their home. The forest began to change under their care. Where once there were webs and decay, there now sprang new. Like the saplings, they grew tall and straight, their leaves unfurling to catch the sunlight that now pierced the once dark canopy. Flowers bloomed in bright colors, and the forest floor, once choked with twisted vines, was now covered with lush green moss and dainty ferns. As the days turned into weeks, the elves' hard work continued. They built new homes high in the trees, their buildings blending seamlessly with nature. The air was filled with the sounds of laughing and melody, a stark contrast to the eerie silence that had once reigned. Handel, seeing the progress, called for a grand party to honor the efforts and sacrifices of his people. The clearing where the battle had begun was turned into a festive gathering place. Lanterns hung from the trees, their soft glow illuminating the night. Tables were laden with food and drink, and the air was filled with the smell of fresh roses and the sound of joyful music. Legolas and Toriel stood at the center party surrounded by their friends and comrades. Thandel raised a glass, his voice carrying over the crowd. Tonight we celebrate our victory and the rebirth of Mirkwood. We honor those who fought and those who let this be a lesson that together we can overcome any darkness. The elves cheered, raising their glasses in a toast. Laughter and music filled the night, and for the first time in a long while, Mirkwood was living with joy. As the party continued, and Toriel found a moment of quiet by the edge of the clearing. They looked out at the forest, now a place of beauty and peace. Toriel, Legolas began, his voice soft. I could not have done this without you. Your strength and courage have been my constant guide. Toriel smiled, her eyes shining with passion. And I could not have asked for a better companion. Together we have faced the dark and emerged into the light. Legolas took her hand, a sign of both gratitude and deep connection to Mirkwood that will thrive. And so shall we. As the night wore on, the elves danced and sang under the stars, their hearts light and their spirits high. Mirkwood, once hidden in darkness, had been reborn through their resolve and unity. Legolas and Toriel stood together, their ties strengthened by the trials they had faced and the hope they now shared. The shadow of Dol Guldur had been lifted, and in its place a new era of peace and wealth had begun in the heart of Minas Tirith, the city of kings. The white tower gleamed under the light of the sun. Lego, the prince archer of Mirkwood, walked the vast expanse of the city's library. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, where ancient wisdom and lost law waited to be rediscovered. Legolas had traveled to the city to visit his dear friend Aragorn, now King Alessa, and I to delve into the troves of information that the city held. The library set within the towering walls of the citadel was a labyrinth of scrolls, tomes, and texts so old that their edges crumbled at a mere touch. The smell of aged parchment and ink filled the air, mixing with the faint smell of beeswax candles that flickered in iron lanterns on a day like any other as the sun cast long shadows through the high, narrow windows. Legolas found himself drawn to a dusty, neglected spot. The shelves here were crammed with books that had not felt the touch of a hand for many years. His sharp elven eyes scanned the titles, many written in tongues long forgotten by men, one particular book bound in cracked leather and etched with faded silver lines caught his attention as he carefully pulled it from its resting place. A cascade of dust particles danced in the air. The book was heavy, and its pages yellowed with age. Legolas opened it to find an old map meticulously drawn and annotated in a script he knew as a Dunic, the language of Númenor. The map showed a hidden vault of Númenor said to hold relics of great power and significance. His heart quickened with excitement and a sense of adventure. The relics of Númenor were not merely artifacts. They were parts of a lost legacy, treasures from a time when men stood alongside elves in the fight against darkness. Without delay, Legolas brought the map to Aragorn, who sat in the grand hall of the White Tower, surrounded by counselors and the burdens of power. The hall, with its high arches and banners of old, was a place of both seriousness and splendor. Aragorn, Legolas, said, his voice soft yet urgent, I have found something that may be of great importance. Aragorn looked up from his counsel, his gray eyes beaming at the sight of his friend. What is it? Legolas laid the map before the king, pointing to the detailed details and the inscriptions. This map talks of a hidden vault of Númenor, a place where relics of the old kingdom are said to rest. Aragorn leaned forward, his interest piqued. He traced the lines of the map with a finger, his brow furrowing in concentration. If this is true, these relics must be found and safeguarded. The legacy of Númenor is our history, and its treasures must not fall into the hands of the enemy. With the king's blessing, Legolas began plans for the trip. He would not go alone. Such an endeavor required the strength and wisdom of trusted friends. Gimli the stout and steadfast dwarf were quick to volunteer, eager for adventure and the promise of hidden wealth. Faramir, the wise and valiant captain of Gondor, also joined their company with his understanding of ancient law, crucial for the journey ahead. Together they stood in the courtyard of the White Tower, ready to start on there. As the sun dipped below the horizon, throwing a warm golden light over the city as they mounted their steeds, the people of Minas Tirith gathered to see them off, their hearts filled with hope and pride. Aragorn addressed the crowd, his words strong and reassuring. My friends, these brave souls journey to uncover the secrets of our past. Let us send them with our gifts and our prayers. May they return safely, bringing with them the riches of Númenor, so that we may learn from our history and respect the legacy of those who came before us. With a final nod from Aragorn, the party set forth on their way going towards the unknown. The road south from Minas Tirith was long and winding, going through the rolling hills and lush fields of Gondor. As the company rode, the scenery gradually changed, giving way to the mysterious, untamed wilderness that lay beyond the limits of the land, and the sounds of the city faded into the soft rustle of leaves and the faraway call of birds. Legolas, with his keen senses and light steps, often scouted ahead, his eyes ever watchful for signs of danger. Gimli, riding stoutly beside Faramir, kept a steady grip on his axe, ready to defend his friends at a moment's notice. Faramir, ever the thinker and strategist, pored over the map, his thoughts focused on understanding the ancient script and directing their way. Their journey took them through the dense woods of Iron, where the trees stood proud and ancient, their branches making a verdant canopy overhead. The forest was a place of both beauty and secret, its depths hiding many secrets. One starry evening, as they made camp beneath a cluster of towering oaks, Faramir spoke of the legends surrounding their destination. The beaches of Umba, he said, his voice low and thoughtful. They are said to be dangerous and wild. Long have they been the stronghold. Of the corsair who bears no love for Gundor, Gimli grunted, poking at the fire with a thick branch. Let them come, he said. I have faced worse than corsairs in my time. Legolas, who had been silently keeping watch, turned to his companions. The corsair may be our enemy, but we must also be careful of the land itself. The map speaks of thick forests, treacherous mountains, and vast fields. Each will pose its own challenges. Their talk was interrupted by the distant howl of a wolf, a warning of the dangers that lurked in the night. They took turns keeping watch, the fire casting long shadows that flashed and danced around their camp. Days turned into weeks as they traveled further south. The woods gave way to rocky terrain, the road becoming steeper and more perilous. The air grew hotter, and the sun beat down upon the murk mercilessly, yet they pressed on, driven by their purpose. One afternoon, as they crossed a particularly narrow mountain pass, they met the first of many dangers. A group of the corsair remnant of the defeated fleet attacked them from the cliffs. Above, arrows rained down, and the clatter of steel rang through the pass. Legolas, quick as lightning, loosed bolts in return, each one finding its mark. Gimli charged forward with a battle cry, his axe swinging in powerful. Aragorn, ever the planner, took cover behind a boulder. His bowstring taut as he fired upon their Aesolon. The fight was fierce but brief. The corsairs, unprepared for the skill and drive of their foes, soon fled, leaving behind their dead and wounded. The friends tended to their own wounds, none of which were grave, and continued their journey with fresh vigilance. As they descended from the mountains, the landscape changed once more. They found themselves in a huge desert, the sand stretching out before them like a golden sea. The heat was oppressive and water became a precious item. Legolas led by the way, his elven senses adjusted to the slightest changes in the terrain. He found hidden springs and shaded spots where they could rest and replenish their supplies. Gimli whined often about the heat and the sand, but his spirit remained high, and Faramir, though tired, remained focused, his mind ever on the map and the trip ahead. One evening, as they rested by a small pool of water, Legolas spoke of the stars in these places, far from the lights of cities, shining brightly. He said, pointing to the sky, they are a sign that even in the darkest of times, there is light to guide us. Gimli looked up, his gruff features softening. And I'll wager those stars have seen more adventures than we ever will. Faramir smiled, the stress of the journey momentarily lifted by their friendship. We may not see as much as the stars, but what we do see we will remember, and sharing our stories will become part of the tales of Middle-earth. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the fire sparking softly. Gimli, feeling a bit more light-hearted, glanced at Legolas with a sly glint in his. Hey Legolas, do you remember when you attempted to teach me how to glide across treetops? Like you elves, do you all make it seem so effortless? Gimli said, faking an exaggeratedly serious tone. Legolas laughed softly. Indeed, I remember, and if I'm not wrong, you ended up hanging upside down from a branch tangled in vines. Faramir laughed, picturing the scene. That must have been quite the sight. Gimli huffed, though a smile tugged at his lips. Well, if I had legs as light as twigs, the balance of a cat, and ears as pointy as I may have managed it better. Faramir raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. Pray tell, Gimli, what difference do pointed ears make it easier to jump from tree to tree? Gimli stroked his beard. Carefully, a twinkle in his eye. It's all in the drafts and currents. You see, the sharp ears cut through the wind, cutting drag and allowing for a more graceful descent. Legolas chuckled, shaking his head. If your ears were as keen as mine, Jimmy, you may have heard the wild boss sneaking up on our camp last night while you were on lookout. At that, they all laughed, the sound echoing into the night. A small comfort amidst their long trip, the map led them ever southward to the remote and rugged beaches of Umba. The sea brought with it a sense of eagerness and a hint of salt, a sign that they were nearing their destination. Finally, after weeks of journey, they stood upon a cliff overlooking the vast expanse of the ocean below them. Nestled against the rocky shore lay the ruins of an old fortress. The map showed that the entrance to the hidden vault lay beneath this fortress, a place long abandoned by the new Manorian. As they made their way down the cliffside path, the ruins loomed before them, the crumbling walls and overgrown battlements, a tribute to the passage of time. Yet despite its dilapidated state, it held an aura of ancient power, a memory of the greatness that once was. Legolas, Gimli, and Faramir stood at the entrance, their hearts filled with a mix of joy and trepidation. They had come far, but the true task lay ahead. The hidden vault awaited, its secrets and riches guarded by time and the unknown. The interior of the old fortress was cool and dark, a pleasant change from the blazing sun outside. The air was laden with the smell of damp stone and the lingering traces of old magic. Legolas, his elven eyes adjusted to the dim light, led the way through the falling halls, his footsteps echoing softly in the silence. Gimli followed close behind, his axe at the ready, while Faramir brought up the rear, the map clutched tightly in his hand. The way through the fortress was no easy feat. The passageways bent and turned, often leading to dead ends or falling into rubble. Ancient paintings, faded and worn, adorned the walls, depicting scenes of Numidian glory and their journeys across the seas. Faramir paused occasionally to study these images, his academic curiosity piqued despite the pressing nature of their quest. Here, Legolas said, stopping before a large iron-bound door. The map showed that beyond this door lay the entrance to the secret vault. The door was covered in intricate carvings, runes of protection and secrets woven into the wood and metal. Gimli stepped forward, inspecting the door with a critical eye. "A fine piece of work," he muttered, "but I reckon it hasn't been opened in centuries." With a grunt of effort, Gimli pushed against the door. It resisted at first, the old mechanisms grumbling in protest. But slowly it began to give way. With a final shove and a good whack from Jim's battle axe, the door creaked open, showing a dark passageway that descended into the deep in the earth. Torch in hand, Faramir led the way down the tight stairs, the light casting eerie shadows on the walls. The air grew older as they descended, and a sense of dread settled over them. They could feel the weight of centuries pressing down upon them, the lingering memory of those who had come before. At the bottom of the stairs they found themselves in a vast cavernous chamber, the roof arched high above, supported by massive stone pillars carved with more Numidian runes. The floor was covered in a thick layer of dust, untouched for untold years. In the center of the room stood a large stone altar, and upon it rested an array of relics. There were complex elf-crafted weapons, shimmering jewels, and tombs bound in ancient leather. The air hummed with the strength of these relics, a tangible reminder of human glory. Faramir neared the altar with reverence, his eyes wide with wonder. "This is beyond anything I could have imagined," he whispered. "These relics, they are a part of our past, our legacy." As they marveled at their finds, the chamber began to tremble, the ground shook and dust rained down from the ceiling. From the shadows emerged a phantom figure, its form flickering, erring with a sinister light. It was the guardian of the vault, a wraith-like entity bound to protect the riches within. The guardian's eyes, hollow and burning with strange fire, fixed upon the intruders. It spoke in a voice that echoed with ages of isolation and dark magic. "Who dares to upset the relics of Numer?" Legolas stepped forward, his voice calm and steady. "We come not to steal but to protect these treasures. We are friends of Numer, seeking to protect its legacy." But the guardian, corrupted by its long watching, was beyond reason. With a wail of anger it attacked, spectral weapons forming in its hands. The fight that followed was fierce and frantic. The Guardians' weapons seemed to pass through skin and bone, leaving a chilling numbness in their wake. Legolas moved with swift accuracy, launching a barrage of arrows that seemed to slow the Guardians' advance. Gimli with his mighty axe hit with all his strength, each blow resonating through the chamber. Faramir, remembering the ancient law, repeated incantations to weaken the spirit's defenses. Despite their efforts, the Guardian proved a powerful force. It moved with unnatural speed, its attacks relentless. The friends fought bravely, their determination unyielding. Gimli, with a powerful swing of his axe, managed to cleave through the spectral armor, temporarily weakening the Guardian. Seizing the opportunity, Legolas drew forth a carefully crafted arrow, its tip sparkling with elven magic. With a steady hand he aimed and fired. The arrow struck true, piercing the Guardian's heart. The wraith let out a final pained cry before dissipating into the ether, its form dissolving into mist. Breathing heavily, the partners stood victorious but weary. The chamber, now silent, seemed to accept their triumphantly. They gathered the relics, carefully treating each item with the respect it deserved. Among the treasures they found the Star of Elendil, a crystal that shone with an interior light, its brilliance a beacon of hope. With the treasures secured, they began their ascent. Each step felt lighter, each breath easier, as if the fortress itself was now leading them to safety. Breaking into the light of day, they looked out over the ocean, the sun setting in a blaze of color. The trip home awaited, but for now they took a moment to rest and think on their victory. The white walls of Minas Tirith gleamed in the morning sun, a beacon of hope and strength. As the adventuring trio neared the gates, a sense of relief and accomplishment washed over them. The trip had been long and arduous, but their goal was to complete the relics of Númenor, which were safe, and they had returned to the City of Kings. The people of Gondor lined the streets, their cheers ringing through the city as the friends made their way to the White Tower. Banners fluttered in the breeze and flowers were spread in their path. The air was filled with joy and celebration. In the great hall, King Elessa awaited them, his eyes shining with pride. The hall was filled with nobles and scholars, all eager to see the jewels that had been brought back from the distant past. Legolas, Gimli, and Faramir stepped forward, their faces showing the weariness of their journey but also the pleasure of a mission complete. They presented the relics, carefully unwrapping each one and placing it on a table covered in rich velvet. The Star of Elendil, in particular, drew gasps of awe from the gathering crowd. Its inner light shone brightly, sending a warm, gentle glow throughout the hall. Aragorn stepped forward, lifting the crystal with respect. "These relics," Aragorn said, his voice resonating through the hall, "are a testament to the greatness of humor. They are a part of our past. Our legacy lets us respect them so that future generations may learn from the past and carry its knowledge into the future." The room erupted in applause, the sound echoing off the high walls. Aragorn placed the Star of Elendil in a place of honor, its light a steady reminder of the trip and the sacrifices made to bring it home. As the formalities ended, the companions found themselves in a cozy room. Within the White Tower, a fire crackling warmly in the hearth, the room was filled with the smell of burning wood and the soft murmur of talks from the hall beyond. Gimli, his spirits were high, raising mugs of ale, one after another, toasting to an innumerable group of events and people. Legolas and Faramir raised their glasses in return, the warmth of friendship filling the room. "To friendship," Legolas said, his words soft and sweet, "and to the memories we have made together." They settled into comfortable shares, the tiredness of their journey easing away. Servants brought trays of food, roasted meats, fresh bread, and an assortment of cheeses and fruits. The friends ate heartily. The simple pleasure of a good meal had been lost. Gimli, ever the storyteller, regaled them with tales of their adventures, his deep voice filling the room with laughter. The hours passed in a warm, comfortable haze as the evening wore on. The talk turned to the future. Arya spoke of his plans to share the information contained within the old tomes and to teach the people of Gondor about their heritage. Legolas spoke of his return to Ethelon, where he would rejoin with Toriel and continue to nurture the land. And its people, still eager for new adventurers, spoke of visiting the sparkling caves once more. The night grew late, and the friends retired to their chambers, the promise of rest and the comfort of a warm bed calling as Legolas lay down. He looked out the window at the stars shining brightly above. In the morning they would all begin the next chapter of their lives, carrying with them the memories and lessons of their adventure. For now they rested, content in the knowledge that they had done their part to honor the past and build a better future for Middle-earth. As we draw the curtain on this evening's journey through the fascinating tales of Middle-earth, I hope you've been moved to a place where every flicker of the fire and whisper of the wind carries the spirit of ancient tales and the company of steadfast friends. Good night, my dear friends. Let the night wrap you in its tapestry of heroic acts and timeless wonders, stitching together the threads of your own epic tales until dawn gently shows a new day brimming with prospects and the promise of adventures yet to come.